Hey, welcome to video 12 in our van build series. Today I'm going to make the platform for our bed in the van. The plan is to use two pieces of L-angle 54 inches long that are 3/16 of an inch thick with a 3-inch rise and a 2-inch flange. They will be made from 6061 T6 aircraft aluminum. I will mount one on the wall on each side of the van using existing heavily reinforced tie-down anchor points. The entire bed will be held in place with 4 bolts threaded into existing holes. No modifications to the van at all. With these two L angles in place and mounted to the van, I will use 4 pieces of C-channel that are 72 and 15/16 long, almost 73 inches. They too are also 3/16 of an inch thick with a 3-inch rise and 2 1.5-inch flanges. They too will be made from 6061 T6 aircraft aluminum. With these 6 pieces tightly bolted together, I will build a well-ventilated wooden platform out of whatever wood I already own, and then place our mattress on top of that. For you engineers out there, yes, you are right. This is way overbuilt. However, throughout this entire van build, I have been trying to use, and in some cases reuse, whatever material I have on hand. Let's get started. Thankfully, the Promaster has several reinforced mounting points along the walls at about hip height. My plan is to reuse these existing holes to mount our bed rails. Here, I'm very carefully marking these holes on the 6061 T6 L angles. Not having a punch handy, I'm just using the end of a screw. Here I'm installing the bed rails for the first time. I haven't bought any hardware yet. I'm actually reusing the same bolts I removed that were holding up the tie-down rings.
Anything on it?
This is total overkill.
Is that like the hard hat guy when he hangs upside down with his glue?
I think that's a Crazy Glue commercial.
Yeah.
What do you think? It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
Okay, I'll grab another one just to see what it looks like. With the side rails in place, we can now start to mount the cross rails. I mounted the cross rails by first centering and drilling a 1/8 inch hole in the L angles. I then clamped the C channel in place and back drilled through the L channel into the C channel above. The clamp I'm using here is called a Cleco clamp. Cleco is spelled C-L-E-C-O. It is a common tool used in aircraft manufacturing and repair. It's super handy. With the 1/8 inch pilot hole drilled in both pieces, I drilled through both pieces to final size, which is 5/16 of an inch. This is called deburring. I'm hand turning an oversized drill bit just to remove burrs from the drill hole. This will ensure that both pieces of aluminum mate tightly together. Nothing special here, just some slightly too short 5/16 bolts that I already had in stock. One connection done, 7 more to go. Although some of these videos were shot out of order, I thought I would quickly share that I trimmed the front of the 2 side rails back just to make sure nobody hurt themselves with the pointed edges. I'm marking them here, and then later I cut them off with a chop saw. Continuing with my recycling plan, my plan here was to reuse some 3/4 inch lumber that came with the van. It was used on the floor in the cargo area. This scrap piece, rendered here, provides me with approximately 48 inches by 55 inches of material. To reuse this material as a base for our new bed, I was planning on setting up a jig that would plunge cut into the plywood every 2 inches. I would leave the ends intact and connect the cuts with a jigsaw. Then I would pull these pieces apart, rotate one of the pieces around and line it up, and then cut it to a length of about 78 inches to support the mattress. Now, I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed with myself for coming up with this plan. Well, as they say, don't count your chickens until they hatch. This didn't work as planned. 2 inches of well-used plywood is not strong enough for our needs. You can hear it there. Anytime there's a knot or a hole, it just breaks. So, I'm not going to use the plywood for this. I'm going to use our cedar. On to Plan B. Plan B involves using some 3-year-old rough-cut eastern white cedar that we have left over from a fencing job we completed 3 years ago. The challenge is with rough-cut wood from a sawmill is it isn't yet dimensional lumber. On paper, these boards are 1x6s. In reality, they are anywhere from 3/4 of an inch thick to 1 1/4 inches thick, and from 5.5 inches wide to over 6 inches. For this project, I need them to be the same thickness and width. This will require the entire morning playing with the thickness planer. The trick here is to get all of the pieces the same thickness. This requires a lot of passes through the planer, as ultimately, if you want them all the same, they all have to be as thin as the thinnest piece you're working with. With the planing finished, I move to the table saw to create a clean edge. Here, I'm just taking the edge off these 1x6s. Now I'm running these pieces through the table saw a second time, bringing the final dimensions down to about 4 inches. Don't worry about the 1.5 inch scrap piece here. They are not going to waste. I'm setting those aside to be used to build framing for our future overhead cabinets. That'll be another video. Having finished with the thickness planer and the table saw, I installed a 1/4 inch radius roundover bit in the router. This removed all sharp edges, much nicer to the touch. All the boards for the wooden bed platform have been planed, cut, and rounded. Huge accomplishment, and over a half of a day of work to move this wood from rough cut cedar to dimensional lumber. Back at the van. Off camera, I also cut a couple of dozen 2-inch cedar spacers. I'm using them here to assist me in equally spacing the boards while I finalize the shape and size of this platform. For the pieces closest to the walls, I removed a little bit of material to allow the lumber to get closer to where I need them. Okay, we're at the back of the van here. I have these just approximately placed. I've got 2-inch spacers here between each piece of cedar, and I've done rough cuts at the corner, and the idea here is to get it into the rough area, and then I'm essentially going to be doing an offset trace off the back wall, and I'll be trimming all of these down to length. The reason I'm going past the metal frame, the bed actually stops about here. I don't want pillows and blankets falling down into the garage below, and also great spot to put a coffee or something like that. So I'm going to trim this back. I'll probably leave about 1 inch from the door. Right here, I'll do a nice moon shape cut to have access to the door opening mechanism there, the latch, so you can leave the vehicle in the case of an emergency. Here I'm adding glue to the first of 2 boards that we will be using to make the boards a single unit. It'll be mounted underneath, just inside the forwardmost cross rail. The screws will ensure the pieces are tightly clamped together while the glue sets. Here is the completed wooden bed platform. Nothing left to do but about 4 hours worth of sanding. Linda and I started with 80 grit sandpaper and first tackled the very obvious rough areas. Some of the work it is easier to do by hand, and other areas better to use an electric sander. After we completed all of the rough sanding, we moved to 100 grit. Here I'm just using the radius of a paint can to give me the necessary half moon cut that I need to provide emergency access to the door handle. We're still working with fairly coarse sandpaper here, but it is doing the job. Moving up to 120 grit now and sanding the entire workpiece a second time. We now have the piece flipped over upside down. Although we didn't spend a lot of time on the underside, we made sure that anything that you could see or touch was appropriately addressed. Here we are installing the finished wooden platform. Notice that we have not painted or stained it yet. This was a last-minute decision to hold off. We still don't know what we're going to do with the ceiling in the van, but we both agreed that if we're going to use stain anywhere in the van, they should match. After spending a better part of an hour discussing our options, we both felt kind of rushed into making a decision, and then realized that it isn't necessary to make that decision right now. Our goals were design, measure, and assemble the bed platform, then remove it to get it out of the way and install it when we need it. Mission accomplished. We will sort out the paint or the stain later. Here's a close-up of the area between the back of the mattress and the back of the van. This couldn't have worked out better. We've left about a 1-inch gap from the back doors, and we have lots of room to access the back door latch if we need it open. Done. Awesome. Okay, let's remove it and get on to building our floor. Boy, are we going to try something different. Something that we haven't seen anyone try. I hope it's not a mistake. Stay tuned.